Conversation go with my friend. We're in this together.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keep the Conversation Going. In this conversation, I chat with Fiona Heavey, a multimedia journalist from Ireland, who helps to share her perspective on how the COVID-19 outbreak has impacted Ireland, its people, and its culture. We compare and contrast the influence of the quarantine on both the Irish and American people. Fiona talks about how the restrictions have impacted the Irish culture, but also talks about what the new normal will look like as Ireland begins to reopen its economy. So as always, let's get this conversation started. So Fiona, welcome to Keep the Conversation Going. This is really exciting for a number of different reasons. First of all, you are our first guest to join me from outside of the States, so that's exciting. And you're going to share a little perspective about where you are and what you've been up to. But you're also the first guest that I've been related to. So Fiona, for those of you who don't know, Fiona is my cousin. Fiona is a multimedia journalist for the Leitrim Observer and is checking in today from Leitrim in Ireland. So welcome to the show, Fiona. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm loving this series.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's nice to have an international following early on in its series debut. So let's kind of jump right in. We were chatting earlier in the week and we were having a great conversation, and Ireland has been about a month or so ahead of the States as this pandemic has unfolded, and we've been able to look to Europe and to Ireland in particular to get a sense of maybe what's coming our way in the States. So can you give us a little bit of perspective about kind of where Ireland is right now in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of what you have been doing to try to stay safe and stay well?
Okay, so in Ireland, we hit restrictions very early on. So from March 12th, we had a basic shutdown of schools, education facilities, childcare facilities, everything like that shut down. We were advised to work from home, and large gatherings were, a no-no. Within a week, we had total lockdown, and that lockdown was very restrictive. So anything outside of essential workers, which was obviously frontline health, food, manufacturing, you were told to stay at home. And anybody who was over the age of 70 or who had a vulnerable or a compromised health system were told to not leave the house, not go outside for a walk, don't leave the house. So to call up, get your food delivered, get your medical supplies delivered, you cannot leave the house. The rest of us were giving a 2-kilometer zone for exercise or recreation. I'm not sure, is that just over a mile in the US?
Yeah, just under a mile, I believe, 2.2.
Yeah. Okay, so you were you could go outside of that for food, for medical attention or supplies, or for work, but you needed to carry papers with you. And there were checkpoints. The Gardaí, the law enforcement here, were giving all the laws to stop people. And at first, I suppose, to send them home, and then if they resisted that, to arrest them for the public safety.
I mean, wow. So if you're watching this right now and you're in the States, what Fiona's just described is something that really is a bit different from what we've been experiencing here. We were asked to stay at home. It was more of a self-imposed quarantine. We did see the government impose some shutdown of businesses for us here in the state of Connecticut and some of our surrounding states. We weren't given a mandated mileage or distance marker that we couldn't leave, and we certainly did not see our police force, kind of enforcing that. What's interesting, and the question that I want to get to here, is that as we kind of compare the response to the pandemics, right, and in Ireland taking a much stricter approach and being very quick to respond, how are you doing now as a nation in terms of, have you seen a drop off in cases? How are the frontline workers managing? Do you have enough supplies for PPE? Those sorts of things. I mean, where are you at now as you kind of head out here in the second half of May? What's the status update on the actual virus itself?
Okay, so we're 9 weeks into official lockdown, and we have now just this week started into phase 1 of our, what we call the roadmap to recovery. And that is 4 phases, which ends at the end of August, and that is when we expect to reopen and return to what our government have called a new normal, which is not the normal that obviously we are used to. We have very much, we've been told that we will not see a peak in the curve. So we have flattened the curve, which was our main aim, because we were scared as an island that we would not have the resources to cope with that, which I think is a worldwide thing. And we have seen the number of community transmissions decrease, obviously, because we're inside, not meeting each other. And our deaths are doing well, I suppose, for our population. We're now around 1,600 deaths, most of them in nursing homes and residential. But we know that this pandemic we're not at the end of it, that we and our health experts say it almost nightly. This is not going away. We're not over this. We cannot just start going back out and meeting in large groups and doing what Irish people do. We're going to be living with this further than 2020.
So a lot to talk about, a lot to break down there. First of all, I would say that the Irish people must feel relatively quite good about their response. There was tremendous unity of the island. As a follower of various social media accounts, there was great rapport and camaraderie amongst the Irish people. They felt like they were coming together. We've had a bit of a different approach here in the States, with states each having their own individual and sometimes even town by town responses. There was unity in pockets and in places, but there wasn't necessarily one approach. And I think it quite frankly benefited Ireland tremendously to say, that this is how we're going to approach it, and it brought the people together. Let's talk a little bit now about, as we look towards reopening, here in the States. Today is the 20th of May when we're recording this. Today's a big day that we are now seeing our first phased reopening. So some things are allowed to reopen. We've had protesters now down at our state capitol and around the country trying to argue for their rights to be open as businesses, for their rights as citizens to be able to go out and to choose to act and behave how they wish. From the Irish perspective, what's the sentiment been like in regards to the quarantine, to the lockdown? Can you talk to me a little bit about, just give us a sense of where people are at in this, 9 weeks in? How are they coping? Has there been calls for reopening? Have you seen protests, or are people largely saying this is what we have to do and we're following orders as we've been given?
Well, at the moment we're pretty bored and we're done with it. It's 9 weeks in, and then maybe the first 2 to 3 weeks we were like, this is nice. It's like being on holidays. But now we are done with it, and obviously it's had a massive effect on our culture. But I think, especially this is important in relation to what you're talking about in communication, we have been very much feel like we were in the loop. So early on, from January onwards, this was on our news. We knew this was happening. In February, we could look to our European counterparts in Italy and see the devastation that was happening here. And so when we had our first case, I think at the end of February, and literally within 2 weeks of that, we had lockdown, because we saw what was coming, and we were very fortunate to see what was happening in Italy and France and Spain. And we're not a police state, and the Irish people do not like to be told what to do. But we know that this is not the Irish government keeping us at home. They want us out paying our taxes. This is for the good of the Irish people. And our Taoiseach, the leader of our country, said in his statement on St. Patrick's Day, when he was actually in Washington, that the most important element of our economy is the Irish people, and they're what we need to keep safe. Yes, we're bored. Yes, we want to get back to it, but there is also a fear there. And with a huge elderly population in Ireland, we're not ready to let go of them, and they are the most vulnerable.
So talk to me a little bit, Fiona, as you're gearing up and getting ready for summer. You have 2 small children yourself, and you're excited with summer coming along down the road here. What is an Irish summer going to look like for you?
It is going to be strange. It's taken away all our festivals. It's taken away our GAA, our national sport, which, the whole country supports and gets behind. And it's from club level up to national level. We're looking at that not happening in 2020. They're saying best case scenario October, but it's a contact sport. And we have been told that there will be social distancing for the rest of the year. We are still bound by a 5-kilometre rule at the moment. We are hoping that will be extended to 20 kilometres, maybe at the end of June. And we've been very much told that as our phases, as happens, it's going to be assessed every week. We're going to look at our community transmission, and if it gets too much, we're going to hit reverse on that. So it's going to be strange. We're going to have to, I suppose, use what is in our vicinity and maybe stop traveling, which is not something that Irish people like to do. We like to travel our own country. We like to travel Europe, America, and we're looking at none of that for 2020.
It sends chills down my spine to think about the GAA not going ahead this summer. And I say that because you and I have had some great experiences, even attending the 2012 Ireland final. What the GAA means to the island is so important because it's on those Saturdays and Sundays throughout the summer that people come together. And it's sad to think that that won't happen. I mean, sports around the world have essentially been put on pause, the GAA being unique in the sense that it's not professional, it is an amateur game, and it really combines and brings communities together in this special way. So can you talk a little bit about where you think the Irish people are at in regards to how this is going to be a new normal, what their culture may look like? Do you feel you have a good pulse of your community as a journalist? What are the conversations that are happening? What do you think will be lost? What do you think will be gained? And how will it look like, let's say, this time next year when we're resuming, hopefully, some of those activities that we've lost this year?
It is quite hard to look towards that and think, how are we going to do this? The Irish, I suppose, we're well known for our festivals, for our social occasions, for our pubs. Like, the even idea that the pubs are closed in Ireland and we don't know when they are reopening it's shocking, and it's very difficult, and it's very difficult for every sector of our community, but especially the elderly, who would be probably maybe more social than the rest of us, who are still cocooning, are still inside and can't see out. Now, obviously, there are the Zoom calls, there are communities who are coming together, there are people, volunteers who are out mowing people's lawns and bringing them food and trying to, I know a lot of the GAA players, the senior GAA players, are actually calling up some of the elderly in their community just to have a chat with them, just to make them feel special. It is hard to know how we're going to have that traditional music session. But even further than that, I suppose a massive hit as well to a lot of people is the churches being closed, no masses or funerals. And funerals and death, we have a particular way of celebrating that in Ireland, and that has been cut off, and people are very alone in that as well. It is a worldwide thing, and I think the Irish people will come together, and we will push forward and find a way to remain as a community and to go with it. But it's a bit strange.
It's interesting. On Facebook, of course, we've seen lots of live concerts. Friends and followers that I have in Facebook and Ireland putting on these live concerts and music coming from living rooms. Even Daniel O'Donnell himself was on Facebook there last week doing a concert. It's strange, and it's strange to think about, the Irish culture transitioning in this way. But I think for all of us around the world, we're going to have to ask some real serious questions about how we return to what once was. And I think that some of us there's loss in life, but there's also going to be potentially mourning that's going to take place for when we return to this new normal. There may be some things and pieces that are missing, and there's a sadness that'll have to be overcome. But I also wonder, right, for a country that is built on its traditions and its cultures, have you seen an emergence of some adaptations where you say, I like that, like this is nice? Is it an integration of technology? Is it, being able to connect in new ways? Have you seen anything that you look at and think, well, even when we return to normal, it'd be nice to hold on to this because this is something that I think brings us together in a new way?
Definitely. And definitely with Zoom and Skype and all those things, I suppose I would have friends throughout Ireland and we would meet maybe twice, 3 times a year for a session. But, in between that time, you might get a text message, you might get a phone call, you didn't really know much about their lives. And now you're getting videos, you're talking to them, to their children, to their parents who are in the background. That's something that I was like, I hope that we get to keep that. And I suppose maybe to see maybe people's hobbies and interests a little bit more on social media. A lot of us kind of kept it very private, and, we might put up 2 pictures a year and be like, that's good, that's that done. Now you're actually getting to see, okay, so they're interested in swimming or they're playing Irish music. I didn't even know that they had a fiddle.
I can relate to that myself. I think I had tried to be relatively private on social media. I had never dreamed of doing anything of this nature. I think that's kind of the Irish way. And it has been nice. I will say that this new atmosphere has said, put it out there. There's people out there around the world that are interested in what you're talking about and your family. They're interested in what you're doing. I hope personally that this is something that we keep, especially amongst the Irish community, that will be willing to share and to be open and to celebrate one another on these channels. It's quite good. So if you're watching still, you probably recognize that Fiona and I could talk all day, and we have for some 35 years. So we'll bring this to a close, but as always, I like to ask my guests what communication means to them. Fiona, you and I have had brilliant conversations for many years about this topic. We both kind of ended up taking careers that are relatively kind of intermingled in the same area. So I'm excited to ask you the question, what does communication mean to you?
I don't think that we have thought about communication in the way that we're thinking about it now. You know, before we met people, we talked to people, we phoned someone, but you didn't actually put any thought into it. And now we're actually thinking, are we doing a video call with them? Are we just going to maybe record something and send it to them? Are we going to practice what we're going to say? What am I wearing for this phone call? I never would have thought, what am I wearing to call Rory?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we're in a new way thinking about communication, and that's amazing. And I suppose in relation to the media, we're in a whole new world as well with it. And I know our health experts are even saying here that communication has never been more important between government and the public. And we need to know that they're being transparent, and we need to know that we can trust them. And trust is a whole new thing with communication. And I even know a lot of people, my friends, are saying they're starting to even cull their social friends because they're now looking at who they're communicating and how they make them feel. Similarly with news, like with your news feed, some people are saying, I'm cutting it down because you know what, that station just has always got that narrative, and while I understand it, I don't like it anymore. Or maybe I'm going to try and tune into something like Al Jazeera once a week, see what's happening in the rest of the world from a different perspective. So I think communication it's all of a sudden at the forefront of everybody's jobs, of everybody's social lives that we never even thought about before. So yeah.
I agree. I've been thinking about communication in this more tangible way, where it was always there, but suddenly it feels as if it's tangible. It feels that we can reach out and touch it, and it is something that we're thinking actively about. I think if you've been studying it around it, you've always kind of seen it as something that was relatively tangible, but it feels quite nice that everyone hopefully is approaching it and recognizing the power that it holds, the influence that it has, whether it's bringing people together to share special moments, or if it's just sharing your perspectives and viewpoints and having a bigger kind of understanding of the world around you. Fiona, this was a lot of fun, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this, and I actually look forward to welcoming you back sometime in the future where we can get an update from our international correspondent. I am
Yeah.
very excited to come over and looking forward to the next session, whenever that will be. Please send my best wishes to everybody in the family. I miss everybody, and I was really looking forward to seeing you extensively. Unfortunately, that trip was cut short, but we will keep the faith, and we'll look forward to getting together soon. And if not, we'll hopefully see you on a FaceTime call maybe later this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Okay, take care, Fiona.
Okay, bye-bye.
Conversation go with my friend.